The colony world of Arion 3 had always been quiet. Its skies were painted soft blue, its oceans calm, its cities peaceful. Farmers tended their fields, children played in the streets, and traders carried goods across the starports without fear. Humanity had carved a fragile but steady home here on the edge of known space. For years it had been untouched by war. That peace ended in a single moment. The first shadows came without warning. Huge jagged shapes tore across the heavens, swallowing the sun. One ship appeared, then another, then another. Within minutes, the sky above the colony was crowded with metal titans, each larger than the cities they threatened to destroy. Civilians froze where they stood, eyes tilted upward. Workers dropped their tools. Mothers clutched their children. Pilots scrambling at the starport abandoned their cargo as the black silhouettes blotted out the light of day. The invasion fleet had arrived, and at its center, towering above them all, was the Warlord's flagship. It was not sleek or graceful like human ships. It was brutal, armored like a fortress, bristling with cannons larger than skyscrapers. Its hull bore the scars of countless battles, each mark a trophy of conquest. The flagship moved with the slow, unstoppable weight of a predator that knew it could not be challenged. Then came the voice. It rolled across every frequency, every channel, every screen. There was no escaping it. The sound was low, deep, and full of contempt. People of Arion, weak children of Earth, look upon me and despair. Every communicator, every terminal, every broadcast tower carried the words of the Warlord. His language was translated automatically by machines, but no translation could soften the venom in his tone. I am Vorthul Karek, Warlord of the Kreth Dominion. My armies are endless. My soldiers are forged in war, bred from birth to fight and trained to kill without fear or mercy. I bring with me 1 million warriors, each greater than 100 of your kind, and they are hungry for conquest. Gasps rippled through the colony. 1 million soldiers. The number itself was crushing. Arion's defenses were small. Its garrisons were trained, yes, but never for this. Against such a force, resistance would be suicide. On the surface, people screamed and ran for the bunkers. Starports shut down in chaos as traffic controllers ordered all civilian ships to remain grounded. Refugees pushed and shoved in a desperate rush for safety. Above, in the void of space, humanity's fleet awaited. Compared to the alien armada, it looked pitiful. Fewer than 24 ships formed a thin line of defense, their hulls scarred from previous patrols and skirmishes. There were no mighty dreadnoughts, no endless reserves, just a handful of cruisers, a few escorts, and a single carrier, barely enough to defend a trade route, much less an entire colony. The Warlord laughed, a harsh, guttural sound that made even the bravest hearts falter. Your ships are broken, your soldiers weak, your people soft. There is no hope for you. Surrender, and I may spare a few of your kind to serve as slaves. Resist and you will all be destroyed. The choice is yours. The threat hung heavy across the stars. On the human flagship, silence reigned. The crew sat frozen at their stations, faces pale, hands trembling. Some whispered prayers under their breath. Others avoided looking at the view screens altogether, as if refusing to see the enemy might make them disappear. Every sensor reading confirmed the truth. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and surrounded. Defeat seemed not just likely, it seemed certain. And yet, at the center of this storm, Captain Elias Ward did not tremble. He sat in the command chair, back straight, hands folded neatly in his lap. His eyes were calm, steady, watching the screens with quiet focus. His crew glanced at him, desperate for guidance, for orders, for some miracle. But Ward said nothing. Instead, he smiled. It was not a broad grin or a reckless laugh. It was a small, measured smile, the kind that carried weight. A smile that said he knew something no one else did. The alien warlord continued his tirade, mocking humanity, boasting of past victories, describing in detail the slaughter to come. His words were heavy with arrogance, each sentence designed to crush human spirit before the first shot was fired. But Ward's smile never faded. His officers exchanged uneasy glances. How could he remain so calm? Did he not hear the threat? Did he not see the size of the enemy fleet? They were cornered, outmatched, doomed. And still their captain looked as though he was sitting at a quiet dinner table, rather than the brink of annihilation. On the surface, alarms screamed as civilians poured into bunkers. Families wept. Soldiers rushed to their posts, pale but determined. Everywhere fear ruled the air, but not on the bridge of the human flagship. Not in the heart of Captain Ward. His smile was not born of madness nor of arrogance. It was the smile of a man who had seen monsters before, who had stood in the shadow of extinction and refused to bow, who understood something his enemy did not, that numbers alone do not decide wars. The Warlord boasted of his 1,000,000 soldiers. The colony trembled. The human fleet waited, tiny against the vastness of the Kreth armada, and Captain Ward simply smiled because he knew. The Warlord thought the battle was already won. But the captain knew the truth. The real fight had not even begun. The voice of Vorthul Carrick did not stop. It thundered across every comm channel, drowning out the nervous chatter of humans. His words filled the air like poisoned smoke, wrapping the colony in fear. "I am the hand of destiny," he declared. "The Kreth dominion expands because none can resist us. Worlds burn before us, armies crumble before our tread. 1,000 species have bent their knees to me, and 1,000 more have been turned to ash. And now you fragile creatures stand in my way?" The bridge of the human flagship remained tense. Officers stiffened at their posts. The comm officer's fingers shook as she tried to mute the Warlord's broadcast, but the signal was too strong. Every time she attempted to shut it out, the voice forced itself back through, louder, more venomous. "Your bodies are weak," Vorthul sneered. "You bleed too easily. Your bones break too quickly. You are not warriors. You are animals who learn to build toys. You think your machines will save you? I will grind them to dust beneath the boots of my soldiers. And when your weapons are broken, when your cities are in flames, your people will be hunted like cattle." His words carried weight, because to the human crew, every word sounded true. The Kreth were taller, stronger, bred for war in a way no human could ever be. The Dominion's history was full of victories, each battle ending with new slaves or new graves. The tactical officer whispered under his breath, "We can't fight 1,000,000 soldiers. Not with this fleet. Not with what we've got." His voice was almost a confession, spoken only to himself, but on the silent bridge. It carried. A few heads turned toward the captain, searching for any sign of fear, any crack in his calm. But Captain Elias Ward remained steady. His eyes never left the view screen. His posture never shifted, and the faint smile still rested on his lips. Vorthul's image flickered onto the main display. The Warlord had chosen to show himself, towering over the bridge like a spectre. He was massive, standing almost 3 meters tall, armored in plates of black metal etched with scars and trophies. His tusked jaw jutted outward, sharp teeth glinting as he grinned. His eyes glowed with cruel amusement. Around his neck hung trinkets, bones, claws, fragments of armor, all taken from enemies he had slain personally. "This is your champion?" Vorthul growled, pointing one clawed finger at the captain's tiny ship. "This is the man who thinks he can stand against me? Look at him, small, fragile, a child pretending to wear the face of a warrior." The crew bristled at the insult, but none dared speak. They could not deny the difference. To alien eyes, humans were smaller, weaker, more breakable. Compared to Vorthul's towering frame, Captain Ward was little more than a shadow. Yet still the captain smiled. Vorthul's grin widened into a snarl. "Do you think your silence frightens me, human? Do you believe your calm will make your death noble? I will tear this world apart stone by stone. My soldiers will descend in waves. They will trample your defenses. They will slaughter your people in the streets. And when the smoke clears, all that will remain of humanity here will be ruins and echoes." Around the colony, his promises were already taking effect. Bunkers overflowed with terrified civilians. Children cried in the arms of their parents. Command posts scrambled, sending out desperate orders for evacuation ships, but the skies were already blocked. No one could flee. The alien fleet had locked the world in an iron cage. The Warlord's broadcast continued, his words painting vivid pictures of the destruction to come. He described his soldiers, genetically engineered, bred for war, their muscles stronger than steel. He described their armor, forged in the forges of black suns, resistant to bullets, fire, even explosions. He described their hunger for blood, how they sang when they killed, how they laughed as they crushed their prey. "You humans," Vorthul sneered, "build your homes on gentle worlds with soft skies and safe seas. You have never known real war. My people are born into it. Every child of the Kreth learns to fight before he can walk. Every female bears warriors into the world. War is our life, war is our breath, and war is why we always win. His voice was a hammer, each word striking down hope. On the bridge, one young ensign swallowed hard, her eyes wet with tears. She whispered, "He's right. We can't fight them. We'll all die here." Her words hung in the air. The warlord's voice finally faded, leaving only the hum of ship systems and the shallow breathing of frightened humans. For a long moment, the bridge was silent. The crew sat frozen, staring at the massive alien fleet on their screens. Shadows still blanketed the colony world below, entire cities cast into darkness beneath the enemy warships. It felt as if the universe itself had grown heavier. Ensign Dara swallowed hard, her hands clutching the edge of her console. She whispered, barely audible, 1 million soldiers. How can anyone fight that? No one answered. No one wanted to. The tactical officer checked his readings again, as if praying the numbers would somehow change. But the sensors told the same story. Enemy ships, hundreds. Drop carriers, dozens. Ground forces, incalculable. Their own fleet, barely 20 ships, many of them old and underarmed. Against such odds, their survival seemed impossible. The comm officer's voice trembled. "Captain, should I prepare the surrender channel?" The words stung. Surrender. A word none of them wanted to hear, yet all of them knew it lingered in the air. Against this enemy, wasn't it the only choice? But Captain Elias Ward did not respond immediately. He sat quietly in the center chair, his hands resting lightly on the armrests, his eyes fixed on the void beyond. The faint smile still tugged at his lips. "Captain," the comm officer asked again, more urgently. Ward turned his head slowly, his expression calm, his voice steady. "No, we're not sending anything." Gasps echoed around the bridge. The crew exchanged shocked glances. Refusal meant war. It meant death. The young helmsman blurted out, "But sir, we can't—" He stopped himself, realizing too late that he had spoken against his commanding officer. His face turned pale. Ward didn't reprimand him. He simply shook his head, his tone quiet but firm. "Panic is what they want. Fear is what they expect. If we give them either, we've already lost." The crew fell into uneasy silence. His words carried weight, but they could not erase the sight of the alien fleet outside. The warlord's image flickered back onto the view screen, his tusked grin filling the display. "Ah," Vorthal growled. "The little captain finds his courage, refusing to kneel. Admirable, but foolish. Do you think your smile will stop my armies? Do you think silence will save your people?" He leaned closer, his eyes glowing with cruel amusement. "Perhaps I should demonstrate. Perhaps I should send only a fraction of my forces. Let your people taste despair before the final slaughter." The crew stiffened. A demonstration meant death, thousands, maybe tens of thousands of colonists killed in a single show of strength. The warlord's laughter rumbled like distant thunder. 1 million soldiers stand ready. I need only a handful to break your spirit." The bridge shook as enemy drop pods began to launch, fiery streaks tearing through the colony's atmosphere. Panic threatened to spill over. Ensign Dara covered her mouth, choking back a cry. The tactical officer gripped his console until his knuckles whitened. The helmsman muttered a prayer under his breath, but the captain did not move. He watched the streaks of fire fall, his eyes calm, his body still. And then softly he spoke. "Hold positions. Do not engage." "Not yet." The crew turned to him startled. "Captain!" the tactical officer protested. "They're landing troops right now. We can't just—" Ward cut him off with a single raised hand. His voice remained quiet, but it carried a steel edge that silenced the entire bridge. Patience. The word felt out of place in this moment of chaos. Patience when the enemy was descending like fire. Patience when fear clawed at every human heart. But Ward's calm was unshakable. The warlord chuckled darkly, watching from his throne aboard the flagship. "Patience," he says. How quaint, how very human. Hoping that delay will change the inevitable. You are nothing but prey waiting for the predator's teeth. He leaned back, spreading his massive arms as if presenting the stars themselves. "Do you know why we conquer, Captain? Because we are born to rule. Every species we face thinks they can resist. They hide behind walls, behind weapons, behind numbers, and every time they fall, they kneel. They break," he sneered, tusks gleaming. "And now it is your turn." The warlord cut the channel, leaving only the silence of space once more. On the human bridge, the tension thickened. The crew waited for their captain to speak, to order something, anything. Finally, Ward leaned forward slightly in his chair. His smile had not vanished. His voice was calm, almost gentle as he spoke. "Numbers don't win wars," he said quietly. The words puzzled his officers. They glanced at one another, confused. The captain continued, his eyes still fixed on the enemy fleet. "We've fought before. Others have come with bigger ships, with larger armies, with stronger bodies. Every one of them thought numbers would carry the day. They all made the same mistake." The helmsman swallowed hard. "What mistake, sir?" Ward's smile deepened, though it never became a grin. It was the smile of certainty, of quiet defiance. "They underestimated us." The crew stared, hearts pounding, but some of the fear began to shift. In its place came something else, something they hadn't felt since the Warlord arrived. A spark, hope. Outside, the alien fleet loomed like a storm ready to break. Drop pods rained fire onto the surface. The colony trembled beneath the weight of invasion. But on the human flagship, Captain Elias Ward sat calmly, a smile on his face, his words hanging in the air like a quiet promise. Numbers don't win wars, and he was ready to prove it. The first wave came like a storm. From the belly of the Kreth fleet, massive carriers opened their armored maws. Drop pods spilled forth by the hundreds, then thousands, streaking through the atmosphere like meteors. The sky above the colony burned, trails of fire carving across the heavens as the alien warlord unleashed his wrath. On the ground, civilians who had not yet reached the bunkers screamed at the sight. The once blue skies of Arion were ablaze, littered with fiery streaks that blotted out the stars. Each pod carried soldiers, massive armored beasts bred for war, each one stronger than 10 men. And there were thousands of them. The first pod slammed into the fields outside the capital city, cratering the earth. Metal doors burst open with explosive force, and the Kreth soldiers emerged in perfect formation. They stood taller than humans, their bodies wrapped in dark alloy armor, their four-fingered hands gripping weapons that glowed with deadly energy. Their roars echoed across the plains, a chorus of war that shook the ground itself. From his throne aboard the flagship, Vorthul Karek threw back his head and laughed. His voice boomed across the colony's channels, letting every human hear his triumph. "Behold the strength of the Dominion. See how my soldiers darken your skies. This is but the first wave, humans. 10,000 warriors, mere scraps of my army, will break your defenses and bathe in your blood. Surrender now, and I may show mercy. Resist, and you will watch your world burn." On the surface, the first clashes erupted. The colony's defense forces, small battalions of armored vehicles and hastily mobilized militia, rushed to meet the invaders. Artillery fired from hidden bunkers, shells bursting among the alien formations. Defense towers rained streams of fire into the skies, swatting some drop pods before they touched the ground. But for every pod destroyed, 100 more landed. For every alien cut down, 10 more surged forward. The Kreth soldiers advanced with terrifying precision, their weapons carving through human tanks as if their armor were paper. In the streets of the capital, panic spread. Families huddled in basements as shockwaves from distant explosions rattled windows. The sound of alien roars drew closer with every passing minute. On the human flagship, the crew watched in horror as their colony was engulfed. The tactical officer slammed his fist against his console. "We can't just sit here, Captain. They'll be slaughtered. We have to engage." Others echoed the same plea. Desperation filled the bridge. The Warlord had unleashed his fury, and the humans were doing nothing. But Captain Elias Ward remained calm. His eyes scanned the unfolding chaos, every movement of the enemy, every line of descent. He saw not just fire and death, he saw patterns. He leaned forward in his chair, his smile faint but deliberate. "Not yet," he said. The crew turned toward him, stunned. "Sir, with respect, if we don't act now, there won't be anyone left to save." Ward's voice remained steady, like steel hidden beneath silk. "If we move too soon, we fight on their terms. That's what Vorthul wants, our fear driving us to strike blindly. We wait until the field is set." The crew hesitated, torn between fear and faith. Vorthul's mocking voice returned, sneering through the comms. "Look at your brave captain. Look how he cowers in his chair while his people die. Humanity hides behind words, behind patience, behind false hope. You are weak, Ward. Weak and soon to be nothing but ash." The bridge shuddered as enemy fire rained down on the colony's orbital defenses. Warning klaxons blared, the red glow casting long shadows over the crew. Fear clawed at them, urging them to act. But Ward's composure never faltered. His hands rested lightly on the armrests of his chair, his gaze unwavering. Then finally he spoke. "Release them." The words were quiet, almost gentle. But the effect was immediate. The tactical officer froze, his eyes wide. "Xerxia, do you mean—" Ward gave a single nod. A ripple of energy pulsed through the ship as encrypted commands were transmitted across hidden frequencies. Across the colony, systems long thought dormant came alive. Deep beneath the surface of Arion, sealed hangars opened. The Warlord had promised a demonstration. He had sworn that 10,000 of his soldiers would be enough to shatter human will. But now, as the battle unfolded, it was not humanity that trembled, it was the Kreth. The first strike of hidden railguns split the skies, their thunder rolling across the colony like the voice of the planet itself. Alien dropships that had descended with such confidence were torn apart mid-air, exploding into balls of fire that scattered debris over the fields below. From the Earth, massive armored doors yawned open, releasing weapons the Kreth had not expected. Buried rail cannons fired in synchronized bursts, shredding alien armor. Hidden missile silos erupted with flame, swarms of guided projectiles streaking toward their targets with merciless precision. Vorthul Karek, sitting upon his throne aboard the flagship, bared his tusks in a snarl. His talons dug deep grooves into the metal arms of his seat. "Impossible," he growled. "They were supposed to be undefended. A colony world. A feeding ground. Where did they get these weapons?" His officers shifted uneasily, but none dared answer. On the surface, the clash turned savage. The Kreth warriors advanced with their usual brutality, energy rifles blazing, armored boots pounding the ground. They fired at human lines, expecting to see soldiers scatter and break. But the humans did not scatter, they advanced. Out of the bunkers, out of the trenches, came soldiers dressed not in gleaming parade uniforms but in hardened combat gear, faces painted with streaks of dirt and ash. These were not frightened militia. These were not colonists with borrowed rifles. These were Deathworld-trained soldiers, men and women forged on planets where the air itself tried to kill them, where predators stalked their every step, where survival meant fighting tooth and claw every single day. Their training grounds were not classrooms, but jungles filled with venomous beasts, deserts that could boil a man alive, mountains that shattered the weak, and they brought that brutality with them to the battlefield. The first Kreth warrior roared as he charged a lone human soldier. He stood nearly 2 meters taller, his armor gleaming, his weapon ready. He fired, a bolt of plasma ripping through the air, only for the human to roll aside with deadly precision, rising to fire a rail-assisted slug that pierced the alien's chest plate. The Kreth fell, his roar silenced in an instant. Another group of Kreth charged, only to be cut down by human squads working with frightening efficiency. They moved like predators, striking from cover, using terrain as if they had built it themselves. One squad lured Kreth soldiers into a ravine, where hidden charges brought the walls crashing down, burying them alive. Another squad used drones to paint targets, their artillery striking with merciless accuracy. The Kreth had strength. They had numbers. But the humans had something more dangerous: adaptability. On the flagship bridge, the crew of the human ship watched in awe as the tide shifted. Reports flowed in, enemy squads pinned down, dropships destroyed, Kreth formations breaking under pressure. For the first time since the invasion began, the humans dared to breathe. The tactical officer leaned forward, eyes wide. "Captain, it's working." "They're holding the lines." Ward nodded once, calm as ever. His smile deepened just slightly. "Of course they are." Below, the colony turned into a battlefield of fire and steel. Kreth soldiers who had expected easy slaughter found themselves hunted. Human soldiers struck from shadows, vanished and struck again. Where the Kreth fought with brute force, the humans fought with cunning, every strike planned, every kill deliberate. In one district of the capital, a squad of humans fought house to house, turning every street corner into an ambush. Plasma bolts scorched the walls, but the humans answered with grenades that blasted alien warriors off their feet. A lone sniper, perched high on a broken tower, picked off Kreth commanders one by one, his shots echoing like thunder. Vorthul's growls deepened into roars of fury. This is not possible. They are prey. They are fragile. His claws dug deeper into the throne's arms until sparks flew from the metal. How are they holding? None of his sub-commanders dared answer. They watched their screens in silence as Kreth soldiers fell, as the humans refused to break. One officer finally spoke, his voice hesitant. "Warlord, it appears the humans were prepared. They must have hidden their defenses. Their armies." Vorthul turned on him with a snarl. "Prepared? For me? Nothing prepares prey for the predator's teeth." But even as he shouted, more reports came in. His soldiers overwhelmed, his dropships destroyed mid-descent, his troops cut off and isolated by human counterattacks. The unthinkable was happening. His unstoppable army was slowing. On the human flagship, Captain Ward rose from his chair for the first time. He clasped his hands behind his back, his calm presence radiating across the bridge. His crew watched him with new eyes, not as a man doomed to die, but as a commander who had seen this coming. He spoke softly, but every ear strained to hear. They thought numbers alone would save them. They thought brute strength was enough, but they've never fought humans before. He turned his gaze toward the enemy fleet, his smile sharp now, edged with defiance. They're about to learn what happens when you challenge a death-world species. The Kreth came in waves. They poured across the plains, armored boots shaking the earth, their roars drowning out the thunder of cannons. They fought with fury, each soldier towering over the humans, each one bred for nothing but conquest. But for every wave that surged forward, the humans were there to break it. Railguns cracked like thunder, each shot punching through Kreth armor as though it were nothing but paper. Drones swarmed overhead, painting targets with deadly precision. Missiles struck from impossible angles, tearing apart formations before they could even reach the front lines. The aliens had expected fear. Instead, they found discipline. Human squads moved with ruthless efficiency, darting between cover, communicating in short bursts, striking and vanishing like wolves. Where the Kreth relied on brute strength, the humans used cunning. Where the Kreth charged headlong, the humans laid traps. On one battlefield, 100 Kreth soldiers stormed a ridge, only to find themselves funneled into a narrow pass. The ground erupted beneath them as mines detonated, ripping their formation apart. Before they could recover, hidden squads rose from the cliffs above, raining fire down into the chaos. In minutes, the 100 had been reduced to a handful, their bodies scattered across the rocks. In another sector, Kreth commanders tried to regroup, barking orders in their guttural tongue. But each time one raised his voice, a single crack echoed across the field. Snipers, patient and merciless, picked them off one by one. Without their leaders, the alien squads faltered, stumbling like headless beasts. The tide was turning. On the surface, Kreth blood stained the soil. Their roars, once triumphant, grew desperate. Human soldiers pressed forward, fearless, their eyes cold and sharp. They had been underestimated their entire lives, by stronger enemies, harsher worlds, even by their own doubts. But here on Arion they proved the truth. They were survivors. And survivors make the deadliest fighters of all. On the human flagship, the crew watched reports flood in. For the first time since the invasion began, their screens showed victories, not losses. Enemy formations collapsing. Alien dropships destroyed mid-descent. Colonists cheering as human forces pushed the Kreth back from the city's edge. The tactical officer's voice cracked with disbelief. They're retreating in some sectors. The Kreth are falling back, murmurs rippled across the bridge. Retreat was a word no one had ever associated with the Kreth dominion. Vorthul Karek, aboard his throne, stared at the screens in fury. His massive jaws clenched, tusks grinding. "No," he growled. "This is not possible." One of his commanders spoke cautiously, almost trembling. "Warlord, their strategy, it is unlike anything we've seen. They fight as if the very land itself is their weapon." "Silence!" Vorthul roared, his clawed hand striking the officer across the face, sending him sprawling. "They are prey. They are fragile." He leaned forward, his eyes blazing. No prey defeats the predator. But even as he said it, he knew the truth. The battlefield was slipping from his control. The humans were dismantling his army piece by piece. Down below, a Death World squad charged into a Kreth position. Outnumbered 5-1, they fought with terrifying precision. One soldier leapt atop an alien, driving a blade between the plates of its armor. Another hurled a grenade with such accuracy it landed in the very hands of a Kreth officer. Before detonating, the survivors tried to rally, but the humans pressed forward relentlessly, eyes burning with a fury the aliens could not match. For every 100 Kreth, one human stood, and the aliens still fell. The capital city, once thought doomed, held strong. Streets that should have been rivers of blood became fortresses. Every window a sniper's nest. Every sewer an ambush point. The Kreth had expected civilians to cower, but instead, they found themselves hunted by soldiers who had prepared every inch of the battlefield. And high above, Captain Elias Ward stood at the heart of it all. His crew looked to him, their fear now transformed into awe. Every move had been part of a plan. Every delay, every moment of silence, every order held back until the precise time. Now they understood why he had smiled when the Warlord had boasted of 1,000,000 troops, because numbers alone do not win wars. Ward clasped his hands behind his back, his eyes fixed on the enemy fleet. The battlefield burned. Alien warships, once proud and unchallenged, now drifted in orbit like broken carcasses. Below, the plains were littered with the bodies of Kreth warriors. Smoke rose in pillars from shattered dropships, black scars across the sky. The invasion, meant to be swift and absolute, had stalled. And for the first time in his reign of terror, Warlord Vorthul Karik felt the taste of defeat. He stood in his throne room, claws twitching, tusks grinding together. His rage filled the chamber, but beneath it something else coiled inside him, something he had never known before. Doubt. The human fleet was battered, yes, outnumbered, certainly. But they had endured. More than that, they had fought back. His soldiers, his millions, were not breaking them. They were being broken. And then, across the comms, the human captain's face appeared once more. Captain Elias Ward, calm, composed, that same infuriating smile upon his lips. Still smiling human. Vorthul growled, his voice a thunder that rattled the bulkheads. You think this is over? I still command hundreds of thousands. I can still send more until this world is ash. Ward tilted his head slightly, as though amused by the words. His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of something far greater than anger. And how many more will you throw into the fire, Warlord? 100,000? 500,000? All of them? It doesn't matter, Vorthul snarled. Arrogant prey. But Ward's eyes sharpened, cold as steel. You never understood, did you? Why, I smiled. The bridge crew leaned closer to their screens, listening in silence as the captain's calm words spread across every frequency. When you boasted of your 1,000,000 soldiers, I knew then that you had already lost. Because you believed war is won by numbers alone. You believed strength was enough. But humanity does not endure because we are strong. We endure because we refuse to break. Because when you take everything from us, when you corner us, when you drive us to the edge, his smile deepened, not of humor, but of something darker. That is when we are at our most dangerous. Silence gripped the channel. Even Vorthul's officers froze, their eyes flicking between their furious warlord and the calm human who spoke with such terrifying certainty. Ward stepped closer to the screen, his voice low, measured. You thought we were prey, but we come from a death world. Every day of our existence we fight to live, against nature, against beasts, against ourselves. And do you know what that's made us? He leaned forward. Survivors, fighters, predators who learned to turn fear into fury. Vorthul growled, though the sound lacked its former strength. His claws dug into the arm of his throne, but the metal gave no comfort. For the first time, he saw the truth in the human's eyes. Not fear, not bravado, but conviction. Ward's tone sharpened. You brought 1,000,000 soldiers here. We'll bury them one by one. And when the last of them falls, humanity will still be standing. Do you know why, Warlord? He let the silence stretch, every ear straining, every heart racing. Because extinction is something we've stared in the face since the beginning. And every time we've beaten it back. Vorthul's chest heaved, his tusks bared in frustration. But behind his fury, the seeds of doubt sprouted into something worse. He had faced countless species across countless wars, but none had ever spoken to him this way. None had ever looked at him not as prey, not as an enemy, but as if he were the fool. And in that moment, he realized something dreadful. The human was not smiling because he underestimated the Kreth. The human was smiling because he had already calculated the outcome. And the outcome was death for the Kreth on the surface. The battle raged on, but the momentum was irreversible. Human squads pushed forward with relentless precision. Every Kreth advance faltered. Every Kreth retreat was hounded mercilessly. From orbit to soil, humanity's will burned brighter than the fires of war. The colonists, once trembling in fear, now shouted from their shelters, their cries of hope echoing louder than the Kreth roars. Humanity, against impossible odds, was not just surviving. They were winning. Vorthul's voice, when it finally came, was lower, less certain. You cannot win forever. Numbers will wear you down. They must. Ward's smile faded, not into fear, not into anger, but into something even more dangerous. Resolve, perhaps, he said softly, but not today, not here. And not against me. The channel cut. On the Kreth flagship, silence hung heavy. Vorthul's officers shifted uneasily, none daring to meet their warlord's eyes. For the first time, their unstoppable leader looked less like a god of war, and more like a cornered beast. On the human bridge, Captain Ward returned to his chair, his calmness undisturbed. His crew straightened, their hearts no longer heavy with dread but burning with determination. They understood now. They understood why their captain had smiled in the face of 1,000,000 enemies, because he knew what Vorthul did not, that humanity does not bow, humanity does not break, and when the universe dares to call them prey, humanity smiles. The guns finally fell silent. Smoke drifted over the plains where so many had died, the ground torn and scarred by the fury of battle. The bodies of Kreth warriors lay in heaps, their armor cracked, their weapons scattered. Among them moved human soldiers, weary but unbroken, their faces smeared with ash and blood. The colony of Arion had survived. Against 1,000,000 soldiers, against a warlord's pride, it still stood. From the shelters, civilians emerged slowly, their eyes wide with disbelief. They had expected chains. They had expected slaughter. Instead, they saw their flag still waving above the capital tower. They saw human soldiers standing tall, where alien giants had fallen. For the first time in days, the colonists dared to cheer. Their voices rose, trembling at first, then stronger until they became a thunder of their own. A roar not of fear, but of defiance. On the human flagship, Captain Elias Ward listened to the cheers echoing across the comms. He sat quietly in his chair, his hands folded before him. His crew watched him in silence, waiting for his words. Finally, he spoke. Let them celebrate. They've earned it. But this war isn't over. The bridge dimmed as his words settled over them. They all knew he was right. Today was a victory, but not the end. Far above, aboard his battered flagship, Warlord Vorthul Karek sat hunched upon his throne. His eyes burned with fury, his claws still stained with the blood of a struck officer. Around him, the silence of his bridge crew was deafening. He had lost thousands. Entire divisions wiped out, his fleets damaged, his honor shattered. Never before had the Kreth Dominion suffered such humiliation at the hands of a lesser species. And yet, he could not forget the human's eyes, that terrible calm, that smile. No other enemy had unnerved him so deeply. He had conquered worlds that burned within days. He had crushed species that never fought back. But humanity had not only resisted, they had inflicted wounds. Wounds the Dominion would not heal quickly. His officers shifted uneasily as he rose from his throne. Pull back the fleets, Vorthul growled. Arion is not worth further losses. We regroup, and we remember. But Warlord, one officer dared, his voice trembling. To retreat. It will spread. Other species will hear of this. They will know the Kreth can be... The officer's words ended in a wet crunch as Vorthul's claw pierced his chest. The Warlord dropped the body to the floor, his tusks bared in rage. They will know nothing, Vorthul snarled. We will silence the whispers. We will rebuild, and when I return to this cursed world, I will not bring 1,000,000 soldiers. I will bring everything. But even as he said the words, he knew the truth was already escaping him. Whispers would spread across the stars. The story would be told, that the Death Worlders had stood against 1,000,000 soldiers, that they had not bowed, that they had bled the Kreth Dominion and sent it limping away. Already signals flickered in the dark between worlds. Merchant crews carried rumors. Spies transmitted coded reports. Captains spoke in hushed voices across neutral ports. The story of Arion had begun to travel, and with it, The Legend of Humanity. Back on the colony, soldiers walked among the ruins, helping civilians rebuild. They buried their dead with solemn pride, their flags draped over the fallen. Each life lost was honored, each sacrifice remembered. But among the living there was no despair, only steel, for they had seen the truth now. They had faced one of the galaxy's greatest warlords and survived. Captain Ward stood upon the balcony of the Capitol Tower, overlooking the wounded city. He watched as children clung to their parents, as neighbors lifted rubble together, as soldiers stood guard at every street. A young officer stepped up beside him. "Sir," she said softly, "what happens now?" Ward did not answer immediately. He looked to the sky where the wreckage of Kreth ships still burned like dying stars. He thought of Vorthal's fury, of his promise to return. Finally he spoke. "Now?" He let the word hang. "Now we prepare. The Kreth will come again. They won't make the same mistake twice." The officer nodded, swallowing hard. "And when they do?" Ward's eyes narrowed, his voice quiet but sharp as a blade. "Then we'll remind them what humanity is. And this time, we won't just survive. We'll make sure they never come back." The wind carried his words over the city, where the fires still smoldered and the people still worked. Already the spirit of resistance was spreading, not just here, but beyond, because humanity had not simply fought a battle. They had lit a signal fire, and in the vast, cold dark of the galaxy that fire would be seen, by friend, by foe, by all.